my name is Ingrid Avallon, and I met JR, I think it was 1968. It's been a long time now, and I just love talking about John Roger. What can I tell you? I don't quite know where to start, except that.
Well, I like what is. Tell us an anecdote. What happened? Did he walk in? Or did you go to a seminar? And what year was it? I like to get into that. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I was working at Northrop, and we were working on the last two Apollo programs, and there were some people that worked there as well that I don't know if you remember their names or not, but Joe and his wife, I called her Sam Bondell. I think they were the first ones to ever get ordained by JR. And anyway, none of us had met John Roger at the time, but a few of us would gather to meet and talk about spiritual things and the experiences that they were having and so on.
Was that in Newbury Park?
That was in Newbury Park, California. And we would, finally, after about a year of that, I said, I love you guys, but I don't know where this is going from here. We really need some guidance. And it wasn't long after that I got this phone call from one of them saying, it was Ann Solar actually, saying, I've met our teacher. And I'm like, do I need a teacher? Remember, I was the youngest one at the time. And so they put together some classes, 6-week classes. And once those started, no one could come in. You had to wait till the 6 weeks were over. But those were in Thousand Oaks, I think. And I went to the second 6-week one. Anyway, I met JR in Newbury Park in someone's living room. He was giving a talk. There was just a small group of people. It was about October, this time of year. And he had a little microphone that everyone was taking to just say their name. And so it was handed to me. I was sitting way in the back. I couldn't really see him, but I could hear him very nicely. And so I said my name, and I am a seeker. And then I handed the mic to somebody else, and JR, I remember hearing him say, well, it looks like you'll fit right in. And I guess I have been for decades now. And it was at one of, so I just thought it was so fascinating that I kept going back every week. I kept going back to hear what he had to say to people. Because he'd usually respond when the microphone was going around, and he would respond to people. And I just thought, wow, that is such a great way to look at something. And so I just kept going. And one of those evenings after his seminar was over, he came to me, and he's telling these men that I would go to the seminar with, that I worked with. I considered them much older. I think they were in their 40s at the time. But we all went together, and JR was saying, this little shit is taking the light to everybody, and then he gave me a big hug, and I stood there kind of stiffly. Remember, I was very young, and I really didn't know him very well, and I'm new in town, and on and on and on. And so as I stood there kind of stiffly, like, well, I'll let you hug me, but I don't think I'm hugging you back, he he took my shoulders and looked into my eyes. And honestly, I've never mentioned it to him in all these years. But what happened was he's about this far away from me, and this energy flowed, and it was like liquid light that came out of his eyes through mine and down into me. And what can I tell you? I know he's had residency in my heart ever since, and we've always had an extremely close bond. And in the first few years, it would be I got a lot of attention, but then a new person would come in. And I'm sure, Zeus, you experience this over and over again, where you're kind of on the inside, but then you have to make room for the next sibling to come forward and take your place.
Yeah, there's no time for jealousy either. You're going to be out pretty soon and someone else is in.
But at any rate, it's just been, I've been drinking from the well of JR's wisdom for many, many decades. It's, when he looked into my eyes, it obviously changed my life forever. And I just consider myself one of JR's girls. Whether it's acknowledged by anybody else or not, I know where I am in that. And when people kind of chuckle when I say, yeah, I'm one of Jesus's girls and JR's girls, and that's just the way it is. So the seminar, so I invited him to dinner to meet Kurt and Sandy, a married couple that I lived with at the time.
What was her last name?
Landon.
That's where a lot of seminars took place.
Oh, JR ended up coming twice a week. This was in Encino for live seminars. And I had told Kurt that I'd met this man. And so I'm talking to him about how it's touched something inside of me. And so Kurt said, we'll invite him to dinner. So I called John Roger up and invited him to dinner. He was a high school teacher at the time. And
you remember the year?
Well, when I first met him, it was 1968. I would think that it was not much more than a year before these seminars started.
Yeah, because he would start getting out of teaching school and becoming a full-on seminar guy.
Yes, I think I knew him for 2 years before he stopped teaching and became a full-time doing the seminars, yeah. And yeah, so anyway, came to the house for dinner, and JR had said to me when I called him up, and I said, you know, Kurt would like you to come to dinner. And he said, wow, Ingrid, you really listened to Spirit. You followed Spirit's directions very well. And so he'd give little hints like this. Remember, I still didn't know the capacity of who this man was at the time. He wasn't calling himself a mystical traveler necessarily. And I think in the beginning I probably would have been suspicious. I had gone to many, many churches throughout my young life, and at that point when I first met him, I knew I believed in God, but I guess I would have fallen under the category of an agnostic. But as time went on, more and more started getting revealed. And it's just, I continued working at Northrop for a while. And
what did you do there?
I was a technical illustrator. Computers were just coming in, and we were doing the work, drawing the airplanes, drawing the parts, drawing the schematics, doing this, doing that, everything from painting to making presentations to the astronauts and so on. So that job had to do with the recovery systems. Everything that happened after the capsule would come back. We'd get the film. We would get, everything. It was a very interesting job. But then
So we really did go to the moon.
You really did go to the moon.
So you saw it, because there's all these, every conspiratory person's out there creating doubt, and you saw it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I saw the film when it came back. I saw the splashdowns. Yeah. And anyway, so it was a very interesting time in life. A lot of people were becoming hippies and into drugs and so on. But for some reason, my life wasn't into that at all. And so one day I had an appointment with him. He was doing light studies at the time. And I think all told I had about 5 of those.
Nice.
But this one day, I was really concerned about something. Because at work, now the government wasn't paying for any more space tests. They were doing these unmanned drones that could go, they were like rockets that could go take
like the Voyager that just keeps going like that? Or?
I think no, not at that time. But these look like large rockets. I don't remember how long they were, let's say 6 to 9 feet. And so they could do reconnaissance on things. They could even drop bombs or crash into things. So one of the presentations that I had to do was really disturbing me. And of course, a lot of this was, you had top secret clearances and things. But I think at this time it's clear to say. So I'm doing this presentation about the kill power of these drones over an island that I won't say the name of, and how many people would be taken out. So that now I'm gone from all this great space exploration to unmanned armament or manned armament. So I go to JR and I'm sitting before him, and I tell him that I didn't come here for that, and he explains to me that how am I to know if by having all of this armament in place that it isn't holding the peace in the world? And I said, well, I didn't know that. And he said he always had a clipboard when you talked to him, and a pen. And he held up the pen and he said, Ingrid, this pen can be used to write declarations of war or treaties of peace, but in itself, it's a neutral object. So this armament can be either holding the peace, or it can stop another war. And inside of me, the Vietnam War was going on at the time. So I was pretty anti-war. But JR somehow changed something inside me where I've never felt that again I've just like sort of watched what's going on. And, you know, you don't, of course, like to see people in harm's way, but that was something that really has stuck with me my whole life. So let's see, what else could I talk to you about?
Let's go right to insight. So
Okay.
we've
Well, okay. John Rogers started asking me to do things. I was on a trajectory to become an architect, and he had told me that if they had it to do over again, they would put me in fine art. That would be a bigger expression for me. And I always thought that was a little crazy, you know, like buildings isn't a big expression, but now I totally know what he meant. And so he came to me first and asked me to do a logo for Atman Travel. And he told me what he wanted, and I did it. And everything's done by hand inked everything in those days. And then when I showed it to him, it was now Prana's Open. And it was before a seminar, and he walked up to me and I showed him, and he goes, Ingrid, that's just like it dropped down from spirit. It was exactly what I was seeing. And he had also asked me to ink the MSIA logo. So I just copied what he had. I had done another one that I presented to him that I thought was much more professional looking. And he said, Ingrid, that's really beautiful what you've done, but it isn't what Spirit showed me, so we'll stick. So I was happy just to give him, and I guess they've been using that ever since. Then I think the next thing he asked me to do was insight. So he showed me a piece of paper, and on the top of it, it had a little rainbow like this. It had 5 heads. They were profiles, 5, you know. And then he said, and you know, once I saw this black and white movie on television, an old Roman film, and on it, during this film, I saw this round, what would you call it? Somebody would be wearing this thing, I can't think of the word right now, but...
Breastplate?
Not quite a breastplate, but something that would be on a chain. And I wanted to say amulet, but that's not the right word. But anyway, and he said he really loved that. So we rented these reel-to-reel black and white movies, and I watched them, and I watched them, and I watched them, and we did it down in Prana in the basement level there. But I never saw anything like that. So I decided, okay, look, he liked the idea of the round amulet, let's call it. And so how do I make a rainbow? How do I put 5 faces in there? The 5 faces represented the different realms, all the different realms. And JR always encouraged us to have some color, the colors that appear in the rainbow, somewhere in your environment as a healing thing. And so I'm sure that's why he brought in the rainbow idea. So I knew that if something was going to be in an advertisement that had to go down to really small, how in the world am I going to put all those together? Well,
and I put it that much. I have to squeeze it down. Sorry, you can't see it on the camera, but super small for the internet, for Instagram.
yes,
and it still fits.
yeah, and it it would still hold. And so I realized that it to some people looked dated, but it had an energy with it that Spirit had put with it. And I could see that logo somewhere, and it never occurred to me that I did it. I could just feel the energy with it. It's almost like it was infused with whatever the traveler spirit had put into it. And I even felt that people got initiated looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
Now someone has made some changes with it. I think it needs to be about 20% tweaked, but if anybody ever cares to ask me to assist, I'd be happy to do that. But
well, just the young generation would have no idea. That's why I'm filming this, because the older generation knows, if they can remember, as they age. And then the young people that are coming in, this would be great archival. And I also interview older facilitators, little things about intentions of different exercises for the younger folks that might want to review something. So this really helps.
Well, then you might be interested in the story of him coming to me about the heartfelt logo, the heart with the hands. I can tell you how that came about.
Oh, please.
Well, now we have the building at 2101 in Santa Monica, and they're doing, how they had the big boom or whatever you call it when they were first starting to film the seminars in there. And so they were very strict about, once you were in the room, you couldn't go out because it interfered with the way it was being filmed. And so my husband then, Ken Thackwell, and I went with Ron and Mary Holnick to this seminar, and we're sitting in the front row, and all of a sudden I have to leave. I have to go to the restroom. It's like there's no option. I just have to get up and go out of the room. And the seminar hadn't started yet, but they had closed the doors. So I go to the restroom. I'm coming back to the room. The doors are closed. Well, here comes JR walking around the corner from, and we're in the hallway. And so he goes, "Oh, Ingrid, I've been wanting to talk to you." And he said he was in Philadelphia recently, and while he was there, he had an experience. And he said, I'm just trying to make this, to make this story as concise as possible because of your timing. So he said that this magnificent being had come to him while he was needing to leave the room, just like I described, where all of a sudden he's in an insight thing and he has to leave the room to go to the restroom. And while he's in, well, I'll just tell it like it was, this stall, this being comes to him. He's got on his long robe, and he said, "I want you to feed my people through the heart." And his hands went like this. I know, I'm getting chills. I see a picture of JR over here. I love looking at you, JR. And I hope I'm telling this story as you would like it. And he said, and so that was to be the, not just the logo, but the higher meaning of something that would carry the energy of feed my people through the heart. And so I did several drawings of this, and he also told me at that time that when he asked this being, who should do this, the being said, Ingrid Avallon. I'm like, what? This person knows who I am? And anyway, he later told me it was Jesus was the person. And he just kept referring to him as this magnificent being, you know. And I think a couple of days later I was talking to him, by the way, JR, who was that? Well, it was Jesus, he said. And, so anyway, I really had a great pleasure of putting that together. I look at it today, and with what's available through technology, I would probably redo it a bit, but I might redo the hands, but it's still lovely. And so what else could I say about that? So anyway, yes, he was very, very supportive of the Heartfelt Foundation and Insight and all the organizations.
Who did the JRF logo? The JRF has like JRF, and it looked...
With a rose?
His logo, yeah, something like that.
There was a man that I think I had met. You mean like on his personal stationery?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think this person, I don't know who that was, but I know it was a man, and we could probably figure that out.
What about the USM?
Oh yes, the USM. I did 3 versions because first they were...
Did you do Kohanar? Were you doing that?
Kohanar first.
Nice.
And then someone else had given a logo to Ron and Mary, and it was sort of a takeoff of Da Vinci's man where his hands are, you know. But in my heart, I knew it wasn't it. In fact, unconsciously, it's always made me, when I think of these things, I wonder what a life we have on the other side. That.
But you were there in the beginning with JR, so it was Kohanar without Ron and Mary. What was that like?
That was just, he had a vision of a mountain, you know, of light. I can't remember that one all that well.
Mm-hmm. It was like Man on the Mountain, or?
No, it was just the mountain with Kohanar, the words Kohanar.
Because I saw a shirt. Saw these shirts being, you know, those kind of like 70s shirts that were coming out. Very simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Mountain Man or something, or...
You know, I have some of these originals stored in my storage out in Newbury Park, actually. And so I've tried to give them to people to take care of, to store, to MSIA, but people wanted to sell them off, and then they don't know that those ink scratch really easily, you know, in the original form.
So then you went and did the USM ones?
So the USM one, then the name of the university got changed from Kohanar to University of Santa Monica. And so as an interim, I just did the words, and, you know, it was just done with type. And then one day, I just started having this vision of putting these other pieces together. I probably did over 100 drawings with just little tweaks here and there and so on. Like at one point I had feet on the spokes that come down from the body, but I'm like, that doesn't look right. And the Macintosh computers had come in, and we got our first computer, one of the first ever in the design and graphic world. And so it was actually my husband Ken who figured out how to use the software, and he said, let me try one of those drawings. And so he did, and that was my first computer generated. Well, the design wasn't generated, but it wasn't inked like the others. And so I sent it to JR. Let's see, I did a drawing of it, sent it to him, put the colors in it, so on, and he sent it back saying that's really beautiful, and showed it to Ron and Mary. They loved it. And I always knew that his influence was in it, but at the time, now I think I've progressed where I could just work with spirit, and do that one. So I like that particular one. And anything else you can think of that you'd like to
just
ask
like
me?
can you think of a couple of anecdotes of you and JR? Clearly you were in that circle where at least he calls you to get something done. That's a pretty good circle there. Any anecdotes throughout the years that you can think of?
Yeah, I never directly worked for pay for any of the organizations. I helped them a great deal. I did a lot of the graphics and things, mostly just for free. Let's see. Well, there was a time when Insight was still new, but now it's growing and it's very popular. Russell's working, they have a staff. And you mentioned my husband Ken. The way JR was when my husband became ill, and the way that he wanted to know everything, about how Ken was doing, the doctors he was seeing, what kind of protocol that he was on. And at one point, we were up at a Sillamar at the Grace Retreat, and he asked John Roger on a lunch break, had Ken called over and asked if we would come before everybody instead of having a private meeting with him, if he could talk to us in front of everyone. And of course we said yes. And Ken was very weak at that point. He had been diagnosed with lung cancer, and it was inoperable by the time we found it. And so when we're standing up there, Ken, he talked to us for quite some time, and he said that all of Ken's windows were open. And for those of you who don't know what windows are, apparently we have a window that we can go through when we go to the other side. Apparently you can go through one that's even partially open if you
He
went
said
out.
like a slot machine.
Yeah, and he said to Ken, it was like you won the slot machine at Vegas because all of your windows were open. And so you can go at any time. And of course, I'm like standing there going, oh my God, this man that I was so much an integral part of my life and my loving, and just I still can't imagine if Ken had died suddenly like that, what would have happened to me. But so now Ken had to sit down because he got tired, and I'm standing there kind of mumbling, and I think tears were coming down my face, and JR said to me, Ingrid, I love you, but I can't understand a word you're saying. Because I was, and so then I'm going on with my questions and story, and I'm so like heartbroken, and I hear JR say, and you don't even have a suicide in this life. And that seems so antithetical to anything to go. I just started laughing. I mean, and I've thought about that so many times over the years. You don't even have a suicide in your life, so you can't get out of this no matter what happens. And that may seem a strange story to tell as well, but JR also, when Ken was in the hospital, he told me to do what the doctors said to do, and to tell Ken that everything was prepared for him on the other side. And so I did, you know, I told him that, and he passed away there in the hospital. And I'm telling you, again, this may be a bizarre thing to say, but John Morton had come to the hospital, and a few friends, we were like circled around Ken's bed, and I actually was laying by him, laying in the bed with Ken by him. And because JR had given me that suggestion, like that was a good thing to do for me. And so that's what I did when I knew he was going to go. And John Morton had come, and he was holding Ken's feet at the end of the bed. And I just felt the energy starting to come up from his feet all the way to his head when he took his last breath. And afterwards, I asked everyone to leave the room, and I was there with Ken. And honestly, I wondered if Christ could have looked as beautiful as he did. He just emanated. And so, anyway, I'm grateful for John Roger in my life. I'm just for all of the teachings, for all of the... If my life were a book, it would just be earmarked with all of these pithy little principle guideposts, amazing things to live by, small things from fluffing up your straw, you know, a laughable way of making my bed every day. JR used to say, fluff up your straw. And the young people don't even know what straw means. I guess in the old days, people put straw in their bed sheets, you know, to sleep on. So, there are just so many things. I mean, his quote that he has how does it go all of a sudden? Maybe you can help me on this. But to be, how does it go? To the good, to the divine in people and things, be good to the divine in people and things, and leave the rest to
To
God.
God, yeah.
And sorry for messing that statement up, but the essence of it is there. That's a great one because, you know, it's a good cornerstone of philosophy to live
Yeah, I
my
think the
life
secret
by.
to soul transcendence is
The secret to soul transcendence
find the good and the divine in others and yourself and leave the
in
rest to
people
God.
and things,
And people and
and
things.
leave the rest to God.
Say it again. So the secret to soul
The
transcendence.
secret to soul transcendence is to find the good and the divine in people and things and leave the rest to God.
Berush Bashan.